My name is Zach Arnold. I'm a Hollywood film and television editor, a documentary director, father of two, an American Ninja Warrior in training, and the creator of Optimize Yourself. Whether you're a creative professional, an entrepreneur, a weekend warrior, or even a professional athlete, I strongly believe that it is no longer necessary to sacrifice your health in order to be successful. Throughout my own career, I have battled attention issues, anxiety, burnout, and back in 2005, after almost losing the battle with suicidal depression, I had had enough. I was done barely surviving. I wanted to thrive. Since then, I have obsessively searched for every possible way to optimize my own creative and athletic performance. And now I want to shorten your learning curve so you can forge your own path to greatness without sacrificing your sanity in the process. You ready? Let's get started designing the optimized version of you. Hello and welcome to a special episode of the Optimize Yourself podcast, where I provide my written articles in audio form so you have the opportunity to listen instead of read if that's your preference. My hope is that you're going to use this opportunity to get up and step away from your desk to build the habit of moving more throughout your workday. Now, as a quick heads up, today's reading is only going to be an excerpt of my latest article, The Ultimate Guide to Building a Healthier Workstation and Being Less Sedentary, all for the price of a single desk chair. And that's for two reasons. Number one, a reading of this article would take forever because this article is over 10,000 words, hence why the title begins with Ultimate Guide. This guide is basically a collection of over a decade of research and experimentation, and it summarizes every single past article and podcast that I have done on the subject of movement and how important it is for your health, and more importantly, your creativity. Number two, there are a ton of links to videos and many products that I recommend in this article, and reading off all of those links would probably double the length of this podcast and bore you to death. So my recommendation would be to simply go visit optimizeyourself.me/workstation ultimate guide to download this guide as a PDF so you have it for future reference. And just to clarify, just like all of my other ultimate guides, this one is 100% free, no strings attached. Before we get to our interview, I'd like to thank the company Adobe for not only supporting this podcast and the Optimize Yourself movement, but also for being kind enough to provide me with 4 yearly subscriptions to Adobe Creative Cloud that I can then give to you. Now, for those that might not be aware, Creative Cloud is an essential package of video creation tools such as Premiere, After Effects, and Audition. These are tools that I personally can't live without, whether I'm working in the web, in TV, or on film projects. To win yourself a yearly subscription to this awesome suite of creative tools, all you have to do is leave an honest review for this podcast in iTunes or Apple Podcasts. It is seriously that simple. I'm going to do one drawing per month for October, November, December, and January. To learn more about the great products that Adobe Creative Cloud has to offer, all you have to do is visit optimizeyourself.me/Adobe. And if that isn't enough to get you excited, you can also enter to win the 12-month Pro Plan from my newest sponsor, Frame.io. If you're not familiar with Frame.io, it is an amazing online collaboration tool where you can comment and interact directly with your videos, providing instant feedback rather than constantly going back and forth via endless email chains while you're doing revisions to your videos. And you know how I feel about email and productivity. To learn more about Frame.io, just visit optimizeyourself.me/Frame.io. And for clarification, that's Frame.io with no periods or spaces. And don't forget to leave that podcast review on iTunes to be entered to win. All right, without further ado, after a brief break to recognize the sponsors who are literally making this podcast possible for you, here's an excerpt from my brand new Ultimate Guide to Building a Healthier Workstation and Being Less Sedentary, all for the price of a single desk chair, which can be downloaded at optimizeyourself.me/workstation ultimate guide. This episode is made possible for you by ErgoDriven, the makers of the TopoMat, my #1 recommendation for anybody who stands at their workstation. The Topo is super comfortable, an awesome conversation starter, and it's also scientifically proven to help you move more throughout the day, which helps reduce discomfort and also increase your focus and productivity. To learn more and get your TopoMat, visit optimizeyourself.me/topo. That's TOPO. This episode is also made possible for you by Sit Tight, my new #1 recommendation if you're searching for a healthier, more ergonomically friendly office chair that turns sitting into an activity that actually improves your health rather than damaging it. Yes, you can actually get fit while you sit. If you've never seen one, just imagine the most comfortable bar stool on the planet on top of a Bosu ball. Just trust me, it's awesome. If you want to learn more about how the Sit Tight can provide fitness for your body, focus for your mind, and fun for your spirit, just visit optimizeyourself.me/sit tight and use the coupon code OPTIMIZE for 10% off your order. Working a very sedentary career as a Hollywood film and television editor, I have spent the last 2 decades figuring out how to stay active all day long despite living in front of a computer in the dark. 15 years ago, when I traded in my super fancy Herman Miller Aeron chair for a $20 exercise ball as my primary desk chair, people laughed at me. 10 years ago, when I invested $3,000 in a motorized height-adjustable workstation for my home office, people thought I was crazy. And 5 years ago, when I moved in a desk treadmill, a doorway pull-up bar, and kettlebells to my office at Empire, people snickered, thinking that I had lost my mind. Luckily, a lot has changed in the last 5 years, but a lot hasn't changed as well. While it's true that people are becoming much more conscious about the fact that sitting is slowly killing us, they are still often seeking the wrong solutions. The most common question that I am still asked to this day is, hey, I want to invest in the best ergonomic office chair on the market, for the sake of my health. So what should I buy? This question is encouraging because it means that people are finally recognizing that you can have a successful career because you invest in your health, not despite prioritizing your health ahead of your career. But it's also frustrating because it's completely the wrong question to ask. If you do a search via Dr. Google for the healthiest office chairs, the #1 option that comes up, if budget is no object, is Herman Miller's Embody chair. And guess what? It costs just under $1,500. Even more extreme, for those who have ample funds to spend and who aren't terrified of the film WALL-E becoming our reality, there's even a workstation that allows you to lie down while you work, if of course you're willing to drop over $8,000. Now, clearly, if I spent over $3,000 on a motorized standing desk a decade ago, I have no problem investing in technology that is going to make my work environment healthier and more ergonomically friendly. But the last thing that I would ever spend a single dollar on is a chair that is so uncomfortable that it encourages me to sit or lie down for hours on end without moving. Do not make the cardinal mistake of thinking that ergonomic and healthy are synonyms. An ergonomically friendly desk chair, like the Herman Miller Embody chair, is absolutely going to reduce lower back pain and discomfort. But unless you're moving throughout your day, it's still slowly killing you. Here's the hard truth. The probability is over 70% that you are sitting as you read or listen to this ultimate guide. You were probably sitting for the 60 minutes before reading or listening to this ultimate guide, and you will probably sit for the vast majority of your day after you are done with this ultimate guide. And as a full disclaimer, I was also sitting as I wrote this ultimate guide. We sit at the breakfast table. Then we sit in our cars or in buses or trains until we get to work. Avoiding the stairs, we then take the elevator until we land at our desk chairs. Then, after between 6 to 12 hours straight of sitting at our desks, we then sit in our cars or buses or trains as we head back home. Exhausted from a crazy day, we then sit at the table while eating dinner. Well, yeah, right, more like the couch. And then we decompress by binge watching the latest and greatest Netflix drama until we collapse into bed, wishing that we had stopped 3 episodes earlier. Rinse, lather, repeat for the next 30 years. Between sitting an average of 13 hours per day and sleeping an average of 8 hours, yeah, 8 hours, right, Americans are sedentary for an average of 21 hours per day. There has to be a better way, right? Right? Despite thinking that the perfect chair will eliminate your discomfort, there's nothing healthy about sitting in the proper ergonomic position for 12 to 16 hours per day. The best ergonomic position is always your next position. And that brilliant quote is thanks to Josh Kirst, who's an ergonomist. The key to building a healthier workstation is combining proper ergonomics with consistent movement. Only with the right equipment and the right habits can you truly have a healthy workstation. The good news is that you can redesign your entire work environment, your workstation, your chair, your habits, and the tools around you all for the price of one single office chair. And you know what? You don't even have to do the research because I've done it for you. So, what is in this ultimate guide? If you've decided that you're ready to make a substantial investment in upgrading your work environment for the sake of your health, your creativity, and your well being, before buying quote unquote the perfect desk chair, here is the ultimate guide to building a healthier, more active, and more ergonomically friendly workstation, all for the price of one fancy desk chair. This guide works under the assumption that your budget is roughly $1,500, which is about the cost of the Herman Miller Embody chair that I mentioned earlier. If your budget is substantially lower, I have broken this guide down to what I believe are the essentials, and I have provided as many budget-friendly options as possible. All you have to do is mix and match the many tools from this guide to fill your most pressing needs first, and then slowly over time, invest in more tools as you start building the proper daily habits to use them. So here's the table of contents. And just for a note, I'm going to read the whole table of contents, but all I'm going to read is part 1 because part 2 and part 3 are littered with videos and links. So I'm just going to go ahead and skip those and assume that you are going to download this at optimizeyourself.me/workstation ultimate guide. In part 1, you're going to learn everything that you always wanted to know about movement, but were afraid to ask. Section 1 is why sedentary is the new smoking, not sitting. Section 2 is why movement is so important for your health and creativity. And Section 3 is why standing and even exercise aren't enough. Then in part 2, I'm going to go into the gearhead's guide to the best equipment available to keep you moving. Section 4 is the essential must-haves for both sitting and standing. Section 5 is tools that help reduce chronic discomfort and pain. And Section 6 is tools to increase strength and burn some extra calories. And then in part 3, you're going to learn that it's not just about the tools, it's about using them consistently. So Section 7 is all about how to modify your daily habits to make activity effortless. Part 1, everything you always wanted to know about movement, but were afraid to ask. Before diving right into all of the cool tools that I recommend for living a more active and pain-free life in front of your workstation, it would be irresponsible if I didn't provide at least a brief overview that explains why being sedentary is so detrimental to your health, your creativity, and ultimately your lifespan. And conversely, it's also vital to explain on a scientific level why movement throughout your workday is so important to optimize your creativity, not to mention your physical and your mental health. And if you think that you're going to get a free pass because you already have a standing desk, or maybe because you hit the gym once in a while or even regularly, you need to keep reading. Section 1, why sedentary is the new smoking, not sitting. If you have a working internet connection, you've most likely come across the headline, "Sitting is the new smoking." This sensationalist phrase is coined by Dr. James Levine, who's the director of the Mayo Clinic at Arizona State University, is everywhere. And yes, the statistics are downright terrifying. Chronic sitting and lack of physical activity can lead to an increased risk of type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, breast cancer and kidney disease in women, colon cancer in men, and oh yeah, early death for people who are 35 years and older. But like a frog that's slowly boiling in water, you don't realize that anything is wrong until it's too late. According to Dr. Levine, sitting is more dangerous than smoking, kills more people than HIV, and is more treacherous than parachuting. We are sitting ourselves to death. What's most alarming to me about all of these studies as they relate to those of us who work in creative fields is that they warn us of the negative and deadly consequences of sitting up to 6 to 8 hours per day. Seriously? 6 to 8 hours? That is like a half day for most creative professionals. Now, it's not like I'm going to write to you, "You should be moving more throughout the day." And you're going to say, "Wait, what? You mean I need to be more active? Huzzah!" But knowing that sitting is bad clearly isn't enough to motivate people. The question is, given the complete and total lack of free time and the constantly moving busyness of the 21st century, what alternative do you have? Now, according to the media and the multi-billion-dollar fitness industry, you essentially have two options. Option number one is to do absolutely nothing, sit all day long, eat poorly, become fat, ugly, unattractive, and then die. Option number two is to exercise 6 days a week. Of course, everybody needs a rest day. Eat an impeccable vegan, paleo, Mediterranean diet, and become one of those amazing before and after pictures that you see on late night infomercials. The problem is there's a giant chasm in between these two options that I like to call everybody else. The problem is that there's nothing sexy about taking a flight of stairs instead of waiting for the elevator. You can't make gazillions of dollars selling moderate long-term lifestyle change. Yet the vast majority of people fail to reach their exercise goals or complete their fitness programs because success is measured by long-term results, and results like losing 30 pounds just don't happen overnight. Here's the secret that nobody tells you. You don't have to go to the gym every single day to be considered healthy. However, you do need to move more. That is the brilliance of reframing your mindset from I have to exercise to I just need to move more throughout my day. Unlike all or nothing exercise programs, when you make the conscious choice to be more active, the benefits are profound and almost immediate. Now, to be clear before moving forwards, I'm not saying that you shouldn't exercise. In fact, I highly recommend it if you have a pulse. But if you're working 14 hours a day and you're trying to raise a family, getting to the gym or doing a round of P90X 6 days a week probably isn't a realistic expectation. There has to be a middle ground. Shockingly, our genes expect us to move 10 to 14 miles per day. Per day. If you are already counting your steps with a Fitbit or you're using similar wearables, you know that 10,000 is the magic number that's recommended by the American Heart Association. That's roughly 5 miles per day, which is less than half of the movement that our bodies and minds expect according to our genetic code that has been wired for hundreds of thousands of years. So here's why this is terrifying if you rely on your creativity for a living. Your brain functions very similar to a muscle. With lack of activity, your brain will atrophy. But conversely, the more you feed your brain, the more it will grow. And the best way to feed your brain the fuel that it needs to function at an optimal level is consistent movement. Section 2, why movement is so important for your health and creativity. When you move, especially when you do quick bursts of high-intensity exercise, even for as little as 60 seconds, your brain releases the neurotransmitters serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. So every single bout of activity is kind of like taking a small dose of Prozac and Ritalin mixed together. Exercise has been proven beyond the shadow of a doubt to help people regulate their anxiety, depression, and their attention issues. As someone who has suffered from adult ADD since college, I've been down the prescription drug road, and I took Adderall for a short time to manage my attention issues. Having also managed my depression, anxiety, and attention issues with exercise and activity, I can tell you firsthand that perpetual motion throughout the day is a way better long-term solution for me. Now, as a side note, just to be clear, I am not giving medical advice of any kind, especially when it comes to taking medication or choosing to eliminate medications in exchange for increased activity. So please make sure to consult your physician first before changing how you manage your own medication. I'm just sharing my own personal story with you to give some personal perspective. According to Dr. John Ratey, who's the author of Spark, the revolutionary new science of exercise in the brain, a massive Dutch study of 19,288 twins and their families, which was published in 2006, showed that exercisers are less anxious, less depressed, less neurotic, and also more socially outgoing. In a Finnish study of 3,403 people in 1999, it showed that those who exercise at least 2 to 3 times a week experience significantly less depression, anger, stress, and cynical distrust than those who exercise less or not at all. Now, beyond the release of neurotransmitters, the other very important chemical that is released during movement and exercise is called BDNF, also known as brain-derived neurotrophic factor. The reason that this is so important is because BDNF is considered miracle-grow for the brain, meaning that the more of it that is released, the faster your new neural connections can grow. The better your memory becomes, the faster you can learn new information, and thus ultimately become smarter over time. In a 2007 study of humans, German researchers found that people learn vocabulary words 20% faster following exercise than they did before exercise, and that the rate of learning correlated directly with levels of BDNF. And along with that, people with a gene variation that robs them of BDNF are more likely to have learning deficiencies. So, in short, without Miracle-Gro, the brain closes itself off to the world, according to Dr. Rady. Furthermore, in my podcast interview with Dr. John Rady, he cites a study that was done in Sweden with 1.2 million boys, and they found a definitive connection between fitness and cognition. Even when they tested identical twins, they found that the less active of the two had lower cognitive scores. Beyond your creativity, perhaps your second most important professional investment, especially if you're a film editor like me, is your ability to retain information. If you have 40 hours of raw footage to review and then ultimately edit down to a 42-minute episode of television, you better have the systems in place to make sure that you can retain as much of your raw footage as possible and synthesize your creative ideas into a finished product. According to Dr. Joan Vernikos, who's the former head of the Life Sciences Division at NASA, as well as the author of one of my favorite books, Sitting Kills Moving Heals, when you are either sitting or lying down, your body is experiencing gravity in a very similar fashion as being weightless in space. And when the force of gravity is no longer present on the human body, your muscles and your bones begin to atrophy, blood circulation is reduced to the brain, and your brain is deprived of oxygen. Triglycerides increase, which are the fats in your blood, and you become insulin resistant, meaning that your body goes into a pre-diabetic state. Inflammation in the body increases, and your metabolism slows to burning as little as 1 calorie per minute. Now, as depressing as all of this sounds, I only bring it up because if you move more throughout the day, the opposite of every single item that I just listed becomes true. Movement every 20 to 30 minutes, even as simple as just standing up and sitting right back down, interrupts the negative effects of sitting. So it's not really so much about the fact that you're sitting. What's important is how much you are sitting without interruption. Therefore, the more that you are able to move throughout the day and protect your brain, the better your ability to make creative decisions, the more money that you're ultimately able to earn, and the better you can provide for your family. So I guess it's time to get a standing desk and a gym membership, right? Well, not so fast. Section number 3, why standing and even exercise aren't enough. In my podcast interview with Ben Greenfield, who is one of the world's foremost health and fitness experts, we discuss in detail what is happening to your body at the physiological level when you sit for long periods during the day and why sitting can lead to all of the aforementioned health risks. But more importantly, we also discuss why there's nothing inherently wrong with sitting. Placing your body in a seated position isn't doing any serious damage in and of itself. The serious damage comes when your body is chronically in the same position with little or no movement for 60 to 90 minutes or more at a time. The negative health consequences of being sedentary for more than 60 to 90 minutes apply to any position, including standing. In short, if you're standing all day, you are going to burn more calories. You're most likely going to increase your HDL cholesterol, and that's also known as the good cholesterol. You might lose a little weight. You're probably going to be in a better mood, and even cooler, standing does have an anti-aging benefit. And while there isn't a ton of scientific research to back this up, I will also argue that you're more creatively engaged and you can maintain focus for longer periods of time. As I talked about with Walter Murch in our podcast together, being a film editor, like many other highly creative professions, is a combination of being a surgeon, an orchestra conductor, and a short order cook, all of whom stand while they work. Now, don't get me wrong, a standing workstation is a great start, but don't pat yourself on the back thinking that you've solved all of your health problems just because you're standing all day. Unfortunately, standing for 12 hours in front of your workstation is only going to make you marginally healthier in the long run because you're still sedentary. In fact, some have even gone so far as to claim that standing desks are mostly bullshit. What I found from years of personal experience is that if you stand to avoid the chronic pain that's associated with sitting, you're only shifting the pain to different places in the body, especially if you don't know how to make the transition correctly. Ask any orthopedist or chiropractor. Don't worry, you don't actually have to because I have. They will tell you that the standing desk movement hasn't really lessened their number of regular clients, it's just changed the problems that they have. So then I guess that means finding more hours in the day to exercise, right? Well, here's where it gets really frustrating. Even if you have miraculously found an extra hour before or after work to jog, bike, or even throw in some HIIT training, you still aren't offsetting the negative effects of being sedentary for the vast majority of your day. Now, don't get me wrong, exercise is fantastic for you and you should be doing it, but you can't use the excuse that it's okay to sit for 12 hours because you've exercised. According to biomechanist Katie Bowman, who's the author of the fantastic book Move Your DNA, you may actually be increasing your risk for cardiac issues by sitting all day and then jamming in a workout at night. By sitting all day, you are restricting blood flow and circulation throughout your blood vessels. And when you suddenly try to pump enormous amounts of blood through these vessels very quickly, it's kind of like trying to run water through a kinked hose. You might end up actually doing more harm than good. Now, to put into perspective how difficult it is to use exercise to counteract the effects of sitting and or being sedentary, recent research has shown that it requires at least an hour of intense exercise to offset the negative effects of sitting for just 6 to 7 hours a day. So if you are regularly working a 12-hour shift like many creative professionals, you would need to exercise for almost 2 hours a day to reverse your risk of cancer, diabetes, heart disease, and obesity. Do you have 2 hours a day to exercise on top of a 12-hour shift with no lunch break? Yeah, me neither. I hope you enjoyed this excerpt from my brand new Ultimate Guide to Building a Healthier Workstation and Being Less Sedentary, all for the price of a single desk chair, which can be found at optimizeyourself.me/workstation ultimate guide. I hope that you are inspired to make at least a few changes to your daily habits so you can sit less, focus more, reduce aches and pain, and make living in front of a computer just a little bit less miserable. I also hope that listening to this article gave you the opportunity to step away from your desk and incorporate just a little bit of movement into your workday. If you enjoyed this episode, I want to remind you before you go to help support future episodes by leaving an honest review of the show in iTunes or Apple Podcasts. If you do leave a review, you're going to be entered to win a yearly subscription to Adobe Creative Cloud, an essential package of video creation tools that I personally cannot live without. Whether you're cutting your very first clip, you're creating Hollywood blockbusters such as Deadpool, or you're making critically acclaimed shows such as Atlanta or Mindhunter, Adobe has the tools that you need to bring your stories to the web, TV, or to film. What's even cooler about Creative Cloud is how easily you can move from ingest to editing, and from color grading to 3D compositing, for example, thanks to all of the smooth integration between Premiere Pro, After Effects, and Audition. To learn more about the products that Adobe Creative Cloud has to offer, visit optimizeyourself.me/Adobe. And to win yourself that yearly subscription, just leave an honest review of this show in iTunes or Apple Podcasts. And if that isn't enough to get you excited, you can also enter to win the 12-month Pro Plan from my newest sponsor, Frame.io, an amazing online collaboration tool where you can comment and interact directly with your videos, providing instant feedback online, rather than constantly going back and forth via endless email chains. And you know how I feel about email and productivity. Even cooler, your comments can be imported directly into your editing software of choice, and it is so intuitive, easy to use, and dare I say pretty, that Frame.io even won an Apple Design Award. Stop patching together your email, your Dropbox, and Vimeo and YouTube, and instead just do yourself a favor and visit optimizeyourself.me/Frame.io. And for clarification, that's Frame.io with no periods or spaces. And do not forget to leave that podcast review in iTunes to be entered to win. Thank you for listening. Be well. This episode of the Optimize Yourself podcast was made possible for you by ErgoDriven, the makers of the TopoMat, my number one recommendation for anybody interested in moving more at their height-adjustable workstation. Listen, standing desks are only great if you're standing well. Otherwise, you're constantly fighting fatigue and chronic pain. Not like any other anti-fatigue mat, the Topo is scientifically proven to help you move more throughout the day, which helps reduce discomfort and also increase your focus and productivity. I'm standing on one as I read this, and I don't go to a single job without it. And if you're smaller and you're concerned that the Topo mat is too big, or you simply don't have the floor space, there's a Topo Mini for that. To learn more, visit optimizeyourself.me/topo. That's TOPO. This episode is also made possible for you by Sit Tight, the desk chair that has instantly become my number one recommendation if you are searching for a healthier, more ergonomically friendly office chair. Sit Tight is an active sitting chair that uses your body's natural ability to balance to activate your postural muscles. You know, those are the muscles that hurt all the time because you're slouched over a keyboard all day long. Well, using the Sit Tight causes a significant increase in your heart rate, it increases brain activity, and it causes a sensation that's similar to riding a bike, which also brings just a bit of fun into the workplace. Simply put, the Sit Tight turns sitting into an activity that actually improves your health rather than damaging it, so you can get fit while you sit. If you want to learn more about this revolutionary new desk chair that I have fallen in love with and how it can provide fitness for your body, focus for your mind, and fun for your spirit, just visit optimizeyourself.me/sittight and use the coupon code OPTIMIZE for 10% off your order.